Hey guys, what's going on? This is Roth. I'm here with Jim and Chris. We're going to talk a little bit Guardians 2. So the idea here is we're not necessarily going to talk about what we think may happen, how it's going to tie into the Marvel Universe. We're just going to talk about things we want to see in this sequel, right? I'll start space. Stay in space. I like space. I want to see more space adventures.
Yeah, I don't really want it to turn into, and I'm a huge Star Trek fan, but I don't want it to turn into the Star Trek movies where it's like they always had to find a reason to end up back in San Francisco, back on Earth. I'm like, you've got an entire galaxy. Go out there, explore it, have fun. And I'd like to see more of that in Guardians 2. Although I am curious, they did squeeze in so many different planets and locations and cool things in the first one.
It's space.
It's space. Apparently it's infinite. You can find a place.
It's infinite. There are more places to go that are even weirder.
I think they know that, right? Like, I think they're not going to go to Earth yet.
Yeah.
So I think they know that. So I want to see even more weird stuff. You know, like, they made the weird work really well in this movie, and I want to see it work more. And the other thing I really, really want to see from this movie is I want that tone to carry through. I want those little castaway jokes that are, like, the best parts of the movie. Just, like, get those little notes right, and you got me hooked.
I think it's going to be interesting too, because I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of passage of time. So in terms of the tone, I think that what I'd like to see, speaking of Star Trek, is that they're just a unified team at this point. It's like not like they split up and now they're coming back together. No, like they have formed a rapport, but there's still much for us to learn as the audience about those dynamics. I do not want to see, and I don't think we will, Star-Lord and Gamora get together.
Yeah, I think that should be that they should stick to the
like
moonlighting rule of like, just keep it that kind of, or to again from Star Trek, another Zoe Saldana thing, like Spock and Uhura, it's like, I don't want to see the bickering couple in the second movie like we did in Star Trek Into Darkness. So I want to kind of see them just sort of like functioning as, I guess, a crew of brigands, if you will.
What's interesting about it is there's this sort of tendency with movies like this to go towards, now this is an established team, now they're the Guardians of the Galaxy, but like they're not like the Avengers. They're just a bunch of people going around, like doing adventures and stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see what the glue is that holds them together and like how they get called into action. And they have to nail that. Like, it can't feel artificial.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's a great point, because I do want them to have stayed together as a team, but why? That's going to be a big question, because it's not like, oh, we're going to stay together to actually save the galaxy. No, they got to be like after things, they've got to be like surviving together. Maybe, they just join Rocket and Groot and become bounty hunters together. And that's what sort of kicks things off. I think
that's all you really need to get them going on a mission, is like they're in it for the money. I mean, you have to keep that sort of anti-hero, I know you love your anti-heroes.
I do.
Kind of thing going with them. They shouldn't be all fully redeemed now, because at the end of the movie, even the way they were wink, wink, nudge, nudge, oh yeah, we wouldn't do that. Like they
what
get
about
their records.
murder?
Yeah. And I also, though, I don't really want to see them have to go after some other sort of Infinity Stone. This whole Infinity Gauntlet Thanos thing, I kind of want to see one movie where that doesn't have to be shoehorned in.
Well, that's another great point, which is I personally really would like to see one focused, streamlined, awesome villain in this film, like, so that we really get to know the villain as well. Because that's a lot to ask, to get to know this team, to get them together, and then to have like 3 tiers of villainy.
The other thing with the villains, you've got, if you have more than one villain, that's more explanation that you're going to have to do, and you're also in this story going to have to fit in who's Star-Lord's father, how we figure out what Yondu is up to, how those two tie together. So there's a lot of story threads to weave together. So I think keeping the villain streamlined is good, but how sequels go, it's like there's always that villain creep, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I want them to avoid that. That's one of my wishes.
Yeah, instead, like, narrow it down even more. I mean, you talked about, so speaking of Yondu, I mean, is that a character that you feel like we need to fill out even more in a sequel, that you want to see more of?
I just want to see him more.
I think he made a real splash in the movie, and he was really cool, and I think he was a great sort of, it made you want to know more about his relationship with Star-Lord, and sort of like, that he was a just an interesting character to spend time with, and Michael Rooker really owned it, I thought.
And why did he make that call? Why did he say, "Hey, I'm not going to tell you who your father is"? It's a good thing we didn't, tell him that. It's like, whoa.
Well, one interesting thing about it, because not only do we predict and know, in fact, Kevin Feige said that it was going to play out in the next film who his father is, but I want to see that play out. And I do think that Yondu is a big part of that, because one of the interesting things that he said was like, they're like, you're so soft on him. Why didn't you just take him to his dad? So to me, it's like being soft on him by not taking to his dad. Does that mean the dad is dangerous? Would he be the central villain?
Yeah.
Or would he be somebody
what if
that
Yondu's the dad?
I don't know if Yondu.
I don't think
they couldn't make that work.
That's
I
a
don't
whole
think.
other conversation, but which we can have, by the
Right.
way, at some point. But I don't think Yondu is the dad.
The music was such a big element to this movie. Do you want to see that continue? Have that continue to be like a character in the film, or do you want to?
Yes, awesome mix too, baby.
Yeah, didn't he get the other tape? At the
Oh yeah,
end?
there's
this whole other hit soundtrack you can have now.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
What about
It's going to
Nova?
include "You Can't Touch This."
Yeah.
It's going to leap forward in time.
How is it gonna
I'm
do
just
that?
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, with Nova, basically you left this Infinity Stone on a planet that now has no security apparatus left because they just sacrificed themselves to save the planet. So it's kind of like, okay, I guess if you had to address the Infinity Stone stuff, you do that. But isn't that kind of just going right back to like,
we love the Guardians, but they're not
did?
necessarily the biggest thinkers in the galaxy.
I would say that Nova was probably the least realized aspect of this movie, and like I'm not as interested in seeing that play out necessarily in Guardians. I don't mind having a Nova movie and a more focus on Nova Corps later, but like I don't necessarily need that to grow up and develop in Guardians. It's like been introduced. People have that concept now. So like in the next movie, it's like, it's not important to me at all to have Nova involved.
I think if it makes sense in the plot, like I'm fine with it. And a lot of people, were saying like, this was really underutilized. And I understand that complaint, but I also feel like, look, sometimes characters are there to serve that purpose though, just to kind of propel the plot forward. And if it can be John C. Reilly and Glenn Close doing it, why not?
Well, I bet you John C. Reilly will have some sort of like pop-up lead. I know a guy who could tell us something and he'll be there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was pie in the sky and everything belonged to Marvel, I would love to see Galactus and those
Show
elements, like some other cosmic elements.
We know the Kree are in there now.
Kree are definitely in there. Skrulls are an issue because they're tied to Fantastic Four, but like if the gates were like flung wide open, and they aren't, but if they were, I'd love to see Silver Surfer or Galactus.
I
Would
want
you
more
really
Howard
though?
the Duck.
Would you do?
I think
Really?
at this point, Howard the Duck has become this kind of thing, and if there's any time where you could take what was a one-off joke and run with it, it's probably this. So I wouldn't mind seeing Howard maybe, even if, again, like he's just a supporting character, like, again, a guy you go to for some information,
I think that there's, like, the Collector, I think, was definitely had, like, a smaller role than I had originally envisioned in this movie. But, we're throwing out things that we'd love to see. But for me, the most important thing is that the focus is on this team, that it's a really streamlined plot. Like, more than anything, that's what I would like to see, like a streamlined plot, the same tone, one big great adventure, one awesome villain, and yes, we'll see the dad play in.
I want to see it to be like another instant classic. I walked out of the movie thinking like, holy crap, I just watched something like really special. I can't talk. but like I absolutely want the next movie to make me feel that same
And
way.
I don't want to see the elements of so many second movies where suddenly it goes dark or has a cliffhanger ending, or like it's the Empire or Star Trek II effect of like, well, now we have to have something really bad happen to them so that in the third film they can get back to it. Like, I kind of don't want that. I want them to be sort of just a fun, romp
universe.
kind of movie. Yeah.
I think it will be. I think that he's going to maintain that tone of the sort of sweet, savory, fun.
James Gunn.
And then those little heartstringy sort of moments. I think that James Gunn will nail that, but we'll see when Guardians 2 comes out. Those are some of our thoughts. What are yours? Leave your comments below. Do you love Guardians like we do? And what would you like to see in the sequel? For all things Guardians, keep it locked right here to IGN.